Hello, hello. I was planning this live and I've planned it for a couple days now, but we are under a severe thunderstorm warning right now. So if the internet goes out, you know why. If I disappear, it's because my internet disappeared. But we'll see how long I can keep this going. I decided to do a reading wrap up on a live stream because I figured it would be fun to get to see what all of you guys are reading too. Just make it a little bit more interactive than just saying, oh, this is what I read this month and here's what I thought of it. We could actually talk about the books that we all read this month. So I might try to do live streams like this more, just so we get to chat back and forth and talk about all of our books that we read instead of just mine. But with that, I will go ahead and get into the books that I read this month. I believe I read 4 books in August, and I will briefly talk about all of them, and then I can expand on any of them if you want, and I do want to hear about all of the books that you guys have been reading. So, actually, I need to share my screen because I don't have the books physically, so I'm just going to pull up their the book pages on Goodreads. Hello, welcome. I'm glad you could join me. What have you been reading this month? Okay, so getting into the first book that I read this month was Victory of Eagles, which is the fifth book in the Temeraire series. I have been rereading the Temeraire series slowly throughout this year, and I do want to finish reading it this year. And I think Victory of Eagles has been my favorite Temeraire book that I've read so far. I can go ahead and open that up if you want to read that a little bit or not. It's whatever. Um, but this one, so the Temeraire books is a historical fantasy. It's the Napoleonic Wars with dragons. Our main character is a naval captain who accidentally becomes a dragon rider, and the story is really focused on the relationship between the dragons and dragon riders, and it's more of like an interpersonal story with the backdrop of the Napoleonic Wars. And this one was the first one where we actually got to see in the perspective of Temeraire, who is our dragon, and I absolutely loved getting to see that perspective. I'm just going to jump back here. I have heard so many good things about Kings of the Wild. It's on my, very to read very soon, but I just have so many books on my to read very soon list. But I'm glad you well, did you enjoy it? You didn't tell me that. I'm not familiar with Bloody Rose. Okay, the next book I read in August was Thornhedge. This was an arc that I had. I believe this book comes out this month, like the 12th or 15th. This is a fairy tale retelling. It's kind of like a dark, weird fairy tale retelling, and this is the story of Sleeping Beauty. But this is from the perspective of the fairy who is trapping Sleeping Beauty in her restful sleep. And it was quirky, it was interesting. It's very short, but I put it down about halfway through reading it, and then I wasn't like really compelled to pick it back up. It's very slow moving, slowly revealing why we're in the situation that we are. And it was fun and kind of cool as a quirky, different fairy tale retelling, but I wasn't super enthralled by it. Really enjoyed it. Okay, cool. Oh, Bloody Rose is the sequel. I forgot that was I forgot it had a sequel. I don't know why I kept thinking it was a standalone. It's only 2 books though, right? The next book I read was Eye of the World, which I actually could just hold up and be like, I read Eye of the World this month, which is the first time. Well, technically, it's the second time I've read this book, but I read it many, many years ago and basically forget everything. So this is like I'm actually remembering reading this book now, and I enjoyed it so much more than because I remember reading it and thought it was meh, And reading it this time, I'm like, no, this is great. I really, really enjoyed it. I do plan on making a standalone review for Eye of the World, but it probably will not be until end of September, early October, because I have so much going on this month. I just don't have time to fit everything in. But I do plan on making a standalone review talking about everything I liked about Eye of the World. Oh, nice. I honestly have owned this is the second book I've read by T. Kingfisher. I will be talking about the other book I read by her because I also read it in August and really enjoyed it. I have heard so many people say they love T. Kingfisher, and that's part of the reason I was like, I want to try more of her books. So, what is some of your favorite T. Kingfisher books? Because I might try to read more of them, and most of them are fairly short too, which is nice. Okay, so the Kings of the Wild books are meant to be a trilogy. The 3rd one's not out yet, right? Y for the Eye of the World books or the Wheel of Time? Yeah, I agree. I really, really like Rosamund Pike's audiobook version. Oh, you mean for Kings of the Wild? The 3rd book's not out yet, but you want it? Yeah, I totally understand, particularly if you're really enjoying the earlier books. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the next book I read was also a T. Kingfisher book, and that is A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, which this was the 4th and final book that I read in August. This is about a well, in this world, each magic user has a specialty, and our main character in this book, their specialty is baking. So they make the best, fluffiest baked goods, and they're like super scrumptious and enjoyable. But our main character gets caught up in a murder investigation, which ends up leading our main character to getting caught up in a coup and a plot against the kingdom. And our main character is like, I'm just a baking wizard. All I can do is make baked goods. How can I possibly help defend the kingdom? But she does what she can. She wants to help out where she can, and she does. And she makes gingerbread men to help her defend the kingdom. And honestly, it is just delightful. And I really enjoyed rereading it. This is the second time I read it. I read it, I think it was last year, and it was just so much fun. And that's why then I really want to read more T. Kingfisher books. So that's why I read Thornhedge and it was slightly underwhelmed. I mean, it was still a nice story, but just not quite the cuteness level and like things that I expect from T. Kingfisher. So it's just slightly underwhelmed, but I am still looking forward to reading more T. Kingfisher books because I've heard so many good things about them. They okay, she doesn't just use gingerbread men, but kind of yes, because she also, like, bakes bread golems to go attack the army, that's invading the kingdom. So, like, she literally makes giant, lumpy bread men that have to go attack. So it's hilarious, it's funny to think about just the different ways they could be fighting. It's a really cute story. If you're looking for, like, really quirky, different, and it is one of those stories that's, like, lighthearted and fun, but at the same time, it does deal with some pretty serious themes, and it edges into, like, a darker tone every now and then while like, it T. Kingfisher is kind of good at doing that, like, balancing, like, really dark storylines with a lighter tone. It's really interesting, I do enjoy that part about her. Yes, do it, and then let me know what you thought of it because I would love to know. If anyone else is just joining, I would love to know what you guys have been reading, what you're currently reading. I'm gonna talk about my current reads next, and, like, favorite and least favorite books that you read in the last few months. I'm talking about the books I read in August, which I read 4 of, and I pretty much enjoyed all of them. Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher was my least favorite, but I still enjoyed it. Like, it was still good. On to books I'm currently reading. I have about 100 pages left in The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England, which I always keep messing up the name of because I want to call it The Frugal Wizard's Guide, and I pretty much just call it Frugal Wizard because I can't remember the name. I am enjoying this one. I feel like I've heard a lot of people say that it was meh for them, and possibly because I went into it with low expectations, I ended up really liking it. But I also think it's the type of story I enjoy because I do kind of enjoy slower, less high magic, historical fantasies. And I went into this thinking it's a historical fantasy, and I pretty much have enjoyed those. Kind of like I was talking about the Temeraire book earlier, and I like historical fantasies. I think I like a variety of fantasies because I also really enjoyed Eye of the World, which is it's kind of a classic fantasy, but also more of like a high fantasy. And I don't feel like that quite as much with this one, but I still enjoyed it. So I feel like I can enjoy a variety of things. Oh, really? I've never read the book of The Jungle Book. And I didn't realize it was a short story collection either. That is fascinating. The second book of Evan Winter's Dragon series. I have heard so much hype about that series. Before I read through all of the Shannara series, which is on my TBR, I want to get to that one someday, which somehow found its way right up next to Wheel of Time for me. Oh, you mean you enjoyed it almost as much as Wheel of Time? Is that what you're saying? Because that is awesome. I'm really enjoying Wheel of Time, and I think I've heard, like, the Shannara books are also maybe a little bit closer to your classic fantasy. So, I mean, I guess it makes sense that they're comparable, but I'm also really happy to hear that you're enjoying that. Oh, you're enjoying it just as about as much as Wheel of Time. You know what? Maybe I should move Shannara higher on my list of books to read. But I'm committing to read The Wheel of Time this next year, and The Wheel of Time is a lot of books, and the Shannara books are a lot of books. There's so many books I wanna read. So many books, so little time. Well, speaking of Wheel of Time, on my TBR, I actually did kind of start this last night. Oop, I don't want the glare on it. I don't know where the glare is. There we go, that kind of gets the glare off of it. I did kind of start this last night. I'm not very far through. I got, like, maybe 10 pages in. But this is definitely going to be a book I finish in September. So this is like definitely finishing on September TBR. I'm mostly going to talk about books that I feel like I'm for sure finishing in September. So obviously I'm finishing Frugal Wizard and then The Great Hunt. And then I have two more books that I definitely want to get through in September. And I'm not sure if I'll get through any more books after that. I have some others on my list that's like, oh, I might read this. I'm interested in reading that soon, but these ones are like ones that I'm definitely getting to. Some of Shannara is classic, some is modern, and some is future. Oh, I did not know that. Definitely put it on your list for one day. Maybe after I finish The Wheel of Time. Well, because after I finish The Wheel of Time, I wanted to finish The Realm of the Elderlings because I've read 5, I think, of the 16 books. But maybe I'll read Wheel of Time, then Realm of the Odalings, then Shannara, because I definitely wanna get to Shannara, and I'm really excited that you liked it. It makes me want to read it more. One of the other books I am definitely reading in September is God Killer. I am currently reading this one. I am about 30% into this book, and it is awesome. It reminds me I think this is gonna be one of those books, it's pitched as an adult book, but I feel like it's going to have strong crossover appeal between YA and adult. It just kinda reads that way to me, and I'm really enjoying it. We get, I think, 3 main perspectives, and it's so far, like it is told in 3rd person. And so far, it's been like a fairly straightforward story, but I've just been enjoying it immensely because we're told the story from, like, 2 characters, one who is a god killer who's, like, out to kill all the gods in this world, and the other one who is, like, bonded to a god and doesn't want that god dead, so we kinda get to see, like, dueling perspectives, and I am really enjoying that. This was released in the UK in January, and it's being released in the US in September. Yeah, so many great series, so many books, so little time. At least you don't have as many open series as I do. Oh my gosh, 128 open series. How do you do it? I feel like I would forget everything that happened in series that I started previously if I had that many open. I mean, I probably have I definitely have more than just a couple open series, you know? Um, but that wow, I feel like if I was reading that many at once, I would start to forget what happened in all of them. Sword of Shannara is my first fantasy book ever back in 1993. I bunked night school to read it. Oh my gosh, that's so much fun. Um, that is awesome. Do you have you reread it and do you still enjoy it? Because I am hoping to get to it sometime. Oh, I do wanna go back to the Open Fantasy series. If I include books that I started but haven't finished, like, not all the books are published, I probably have more. I definitely have double digit Open Fantasy series because there are a number of books that I've read the first book or the first 2 books because that's all that was out, but the other books aren't published. And some of them might be published now and some of them aren't published yet. So, I guess it depends, like, are you counting those ones whenever you're talking about Open Fantasy series? Next year is all about putting dents in open series or closing them out. No more new series, only standalones when I need a break. Yes, I think so many fantasy books are series, which I love because whenever you get into a world that you enjoy, you want to just keep reading in it. But I wish there were more fantasy standalones. I agree with that. Not to add more to your maybe one day list, but last year I read all of Karen Marie Monging. I am not familiar with that name. I'm gonna have to look that one up. I'm gonna do that right now. Karen Marie, or is it Moaning? I don't know how the last name is said. Where do you recommend starting with their books? Fever series. Oh, is this is the same one more geared towards female audience though? I'm fine with that. I feel like I read a variety of fantasy books, so I'm fine with, like, geared towards either. Because I like modern fantasy, I like historical fantasy, I like classic fantasy, so I'm fine with that, and then what was the one I read earlier this year? Inkblood Sister Scribe, I think, and I would say that one I enjoyed that, and that was definitely geared more towards a modern audience, I would say. Karen Marie. Yeah, I've not seen these ones talked about before. I will definitely look more into those. Thank you for the rec. Sorry, I meant high school. I read the first 7 books of Shannara and then switching to other authors like Eddings, Feist, and Wheel of Time. Need to go back and try Shannara again. I have also not read any Eddings or Feist. And I think the Library of Alexandria channel is reading through one of the Feist series. I think it's Daughter of the Empire. And I almost wanted to join in on their read along, but I just have so many other books I'm trying to read all at once. So definitely on my one day list. Definitely. The other book that I am definitely reading in September, and this is the last book that I'm definitely reading in September. Anything I mention other than this is just hopeful, maybe we'll see, but might not happen. Is Bookshops and Bone Dust. This doesn't come out until November, but I was lucky enough to snag an ARC. And I feel like I've seen a lot of people say they have snagged an ARC for Bookshops and Bone Dust, which slightly surprises me because I thought it was a popular enough series, they would be, like, really limited in how many arcs they give out, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm definitely reading this one in September, and then I do plan on having a dedicated review for this one up on the channel at some point. Like I said about, The Eye of the World, I will be doing a dedicated review for this book on the channel at some point, but definitely not at least until the end of September. So Bookshops and Bone Dust review might not go up until October. So we will see. Daughter of the Empire is good. I've heard so many good things about it. I want to read it, but like I feel like there is a lot of really popular fantasy authors that I just haven't gotten to yet. And I feel like I need to catch up with everyone because there's so many. Um, I will be putting out a video this year of all the series I want to finish this year that I'm working my way through. Obviously, Wheel of Time is not going to be on it because this is going to be finishing next year. But I am going to put out a video of like all the series I'm going to read this year, and some of them are like the classic books I'm trying to catch up on. But I feel like over the next few years, I'm going to be doing that. Just like what are classic books that everyone has read and loved. Yes, Legend of Lattes was amazing. Right? Well, I'm really curious what they're gonna do with, Bookshops and Bone Dust because Legends and Lattes was a cozy fantasy, and I think he's still trying to make Bookshops and Bone Dust a cozy fantasy, but it's also a prequel, and I think, Viv gets injured, and then she, like, stays behind, and we just get, like, her day-to-day as she's recovering, and that's how they make it a cozy fantasy, but I'm really curious because whenever I first heard it was a prequel, I was like, "Wait a minute, this doesn't sound cozy anymore." Because the reason it's cozy is because she retired. But hey, it's on NetGalley. Well, I think it's still up. You can try to snag an ARC. I don't know if they're still giving them out, but I was surprised how many people said they got ARCs for it. So I guess it's worth a try. The other book I was maybe considering reading in September, and I don't know if I'll get around to it, is Age of Assassins. I have been planning on either reading this or Bone Ship, or is it the Bone Ships? And I actually had this, so I made a video at the beginning of the year of like 23 books I want to read in 2023, and one of them was a RJ Barker book, and it's either Age of Assassins or Bone Ships. And I was kind of leaning towards this one because I'm not gonna lie, I've heard a lot of people say this is not like Robin Hobb, but the premise just sounds like Robin Hobb. So I'm like, I'm curious enough to find out. But I feel like with everything else I'm planning on reading in September, I'm probably not going to get to this. And honestly, if I finish The Great Hunt, I'm probably going to dive into The Dragon Reborn rather than start yet another open series. So, yeah, those are my to be read soon plans. But if you guys want to tell me more about the books that you've been reading recently that you love from the past that you want to convince me to read, or like books you're planning on reading next month, I would love to hear more about all of it. Tell me about your books. Also, what do you guys think? I changed this because I realized in like all of my videos, I have these facing forward, but with the backlight, it's really hard to tell what they are. But I don't know if it looks weird like this. Do you make large TBRs and then pick and choose, or do you prefer smaller selections? I am a little bit of a mood reader, and I used to make really large TBRs, and I would get a little bit discouraged that I didn't finish all the books on my TBR. So I have started making smaller TBRs. Like these are the books that I know I'm getting to next. So that way I feel like I actually accomplished my TBR. But sometimes there's just a whole lot of books that I want to read. And speaking of open series, I want to start another series. My library has these, and I don't hear anyone talking about them, and they look cool. My library has this series, and I think there's like 5 books in the series, and this is book one. And at least the first few books, like they're not even that long. So I'm like, maybe let me see how many pages this is. This is like let's see, 380 pages. So it's like not even that long of a series. And I was thinking of maybe starting this soon because also all the covers, they have this like dragon pattern. And whenever they're all together on the library shelf, it looks really cool. It's just one of those things you find and you're like, "I wanna do that," but also I have so many books I'm trying to read and I don't have time. Also, I know, Bookish Chaz is reading the Live Ship Traders right now, and I read the first 2 books in Live Ship Traders, and I never got around to reading Ship of Destiny, and he told me, "I'm reading it in October, you can join me." And I was like, "I might do that," but then I'm also trying to read, like, too many other books. So I might try to finish because it would at least be finishing the Life Ship Traders trilogy in Realm of the Elderlings, and then we'll find out. We'll go on from there. The Fever series and the Alex Versus series by Benedict Jaka are the best modern fiction series I have ever read. Oh, okay. The worlds and the authors made the worlds the authors made are top notch. I love to hear it. I love to hear it. I think I have heard people talking about Alex Versus actually. I will have to look into it because I haven't really looked into it that much. My favorite recent book has been Project Hail Mary. I love Rocky. I have not read any Andy Weir books. I did watch The Martian, so I maybe kind of know the Martian story, but I have heard so many people talking about Andy Weir and I need to actually read them already. Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archives and other Cosmere books are brilliant. I need to read more Sanderson. I really do. I have read only a handful of Sanderson books. Obviously, I'm currently reading Frugal Wizard. I have about, I think it's about 100 pages left. And I have read the first Mistborn book and the Final Empire, I believe. And I have read, what is the one, his first one, Elantris. There it is. I've read Elantris. And then I started one of his YA series and I DNF'd it, but that was before I really got into fantasy. So I might give it another try again. Um, I have so many of his books and can't decide where to start. Yeah, that definitely. He has so many books. So many. The Martian is an amazing adaptation. I have heard that. I have heard that. I do kind of want to read the book now, but yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that that was like one of the best book to movie adaptations, which is awesome. And I did enjoy it. I'm not a huge sci-fi reader in general, but like I enjoy the occasional sci-fi. And I want to give it more of a try because I feel like I haven't actually given sci-fi enough of a chance. You know? I did read the first Three Body book this year. I know the American adaptation is coming out on Netflix next year, I believe. And that book, it was very much like sciency based, and I was like looking up stuff. I was googling stuff because I'm like, I do not understand. But I've heard like not all sci-fi is that way. Um, I've heard The Martian can be somewhat technical, but you can still understand the story. So I appreciate that. I appreciate still being able to, and I think Three Body, you still understand the story too. It's just like there's times where it's saying stuff that you're like, wait, is this real? Like for real? Physics doesn't work the same in outer space. Look, I don't know science. I don't know anything. So yeah. Um, what are some of your favorite like book to movie adaptations? Because there are some really good ones. I know I've been talking about Wheel of Time, and Wheel of Time is, kind of a controversial adaptation. Most people are saying it's not faithful, but I I don't know. I feel like there are other good examples of even fantasy adaptations or just like other book to movie adaptations. I had the same problem, so chose Stormlight and then read Elantris and reading the Final Empire now. I've heard a lot of people actually suggesting starting with Stormlight. The books are so long though. They're a little intimidating, but I want to get around to them at some point. I want to know what all the hype is. They're supposed to be it's supposed to be like 10 books, and it's like the first 5 are a single arc, and then the second 5 are a separate arc, I believe. Is that correct? Because I think Sanderson was talking about releasing book 5 sometime before he released all of these, all the secret projects. I'm actually really looking forward to Yumi, and I think I've heard that you can read Yumi and the Nightmare Painter without reading any of the other Cosmere books. So I am looking forward to that one actually coming out on like wider publication, not just Kickstarter publication. LOTR is the best. Yes, I agree. Um, but almost always watch the adaptation first and then read the books. I kind of agree with that because you get so much more with the books and you're less disappointed by the adaptation. Whereas if you read the books first, I feel like it's very easy to be disappointed in the adaptation, where if you do it the other way around, you're getting like a little bit of the story and you get some of the ideas, and then you go read the books and it's like so much deeper. It's like the tip of the iceberg versus the entire iceberg. I like both Letter for the King book and show, but they are very different from each other. I think I started Leather for the King years ago, and I don't think I finished it, but I don't remember why. Oh, between like the first arc and second arc of Stormlight. Yeah, I think I did hear something about that, but hasn't it been a while? Hasn't it almost been 2 years since he released book 4? Or am I wrong about that? Because I know he writes a lot, but I feel like he maybe hasn't always been consistent with Stormlight. Did you like the movie if you watched it first? Because I did the opposite, and I almost didn't make it through the movie because I was so disappointed. Rings of Power did hurt. Rings of Power definitely hurt. Um, I feel like they should have not included our main characters that we knew. I mean, they could have, but I guess not made the story surrounding them. Like we could have followed other characters that we were not familiar with already and had like our main characters cameo or show up in the background but not be our main story. I liked Braum only. Yeah, yeah, but he wasn't in it very long. Also, the CG on the dragon was so bad, and even they're like the eyes whenever like Aragon is on the dragon and they're flying, like they don't match up. It hurts. Aragon, but they are supposed to be remaking Aragon, and I hope it's good. The initial watch I did, then after the read, I was like, "What the hell was I thinking?" But okay, that's like it got you to read the book, right? Because I have heard, some people say movies are just two-hour long trailers for books. So in some ways, if it got you to read the book, that's a positive. I think some of my favorite adaptations are Lord of the Rings, obviously. Um, there's a book called A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, which I feel like not that many people on BookTube talk about, but that adaptation is brilliantly done. It is so close to the book. I'm trying to think of others. Narnia, especially the first movie, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that came out, I think, what was it, 2005? I thought that one was good. We kept a lot of the story beats and we kept like the heart of the story. The Hunger Games, particularly the first movie, I thought was a good adaptation. Oh, and Game of Thrones. Like, honestly, I've not read all the books. I've only read the first 2 books. I watched the entire show, but at least early Game of Thrones, or from my understanding, pretty much what the series actually adapted from the book is a lot better than whenever they didn't have any more books and just, like, went off on their own. So, yeah, Game of Thrones was amazingly close adaptation. Oh, I already saw that comment. The Hunger Games first movie is almost one to one. Yes. Yes, I agree. And it's kind of amazing because in the book, we get so much inside Katniss's head that they can't show in a movie version without, like, I guess, you hearing their thoughts, which can sometimes come off cheesy. Like sometimes you can do it fine and sometimes it comes off cheesy. So I thought they did a great job. And then showing the game makers like planning things was a good way to show some of what Katniss told us in the book of like, oh, I know the game makers are probably orchestrating this. Instead of actually like hearing her thoughts about it, we actually see it happening. So yes, that was really done. Really well done. Game of Thrones season 1 through 4 was pretty close. Post 5 went AWOL. Yeah, I've definitely heard that. I am reading the books. That is one of the series that see, this is one of my open series right now. And, I am interested to see what is in the books that's not included in the Game of Thrones show, because I'm sure there's some things. Game of Thrones season 1 through 4 were almost one to one. I agree, and reading, just books 1 and 2, I was like, they pretty much included the vast majority of everything that happened in the book, almost exactly like it happened in the book. And I love seeing things and you can like see like, oh, this is dialogue, this exchange was like lifted from the book and just went straight into the show, which I know they can't always do. Like we were just talking about the Hunger Games, they can't show us inside Katniss's head. So like, some things they do have to adapt because it is a different medium, but it is cool whenever they can have, like, dialogue exchanges that are that close. I've heard that. See, this is another one I've not read or watched. The Expanse is on Prime, I believe, right? Should I watch The Expanse first, or should I read the books first? That is what I want to know. It's also a longer sci-fi series, which I haven't read in I don't read that many sci-fi series, and then I'm in too many long series right now. You does the internal monologue quite well. Is this talking is this a show or movie called You, or is this, referring back to The Hunger Games? I thought I liked Percy Jackson and the Golden Compass till I read the books. I have not ever seen the Percy Jackson movies, and I've heard they're pretty bad. I am kind of interested in the show that Disney Plus is doing. When does it release this month? I know they're releasing it like fairly soon, but it's been so long since I read any of the Percy Jackson books. Expanse pre a Max and Maxon is a one-to-one adaptation. I've heard that is really close. The thing is successful adaptations are almost always one to one. Yeah, I do kind of agree with that, and I think, successful adaptations, like, the most important thing is keeping the main themes of the story and keeping, like, the general story arcs and, just like the heart of the story. So I don't need every single scene played out on screen exactly as long as we keep like that because I would say A Monster Calls and A Monster Calls is very close to the book. But they do change a handful of things and I actually like the changes and I think it works better for a screen adaptation of the book. But what it does is really expand on our characters' internal conflict that we don't get to see as much on screen. So that I feel like the changes were good. They just helped expand on the character a little bit in a visual medium, kind of like I said about the Hunger Games. They actually showed the game makers, which we didn't get to see at all in the book, but I thought it was a good thing because we're basically expanding on our characters' internal monologue and showing what they can't show on screen. So yes, I agree that like good adaptations are usually very close, but I do understand that they have to change, like, some things. Reacher was a good show, but I don't know how accurate it is except for him finally being the right size. Okay, I've not seen the Reacher show, and I've not read any of the books. I did watch a movie called Reacher that came out, I wanna say back in 2012. I don't know when it came out, and that is my only experience with Reacher. Terminal list is one to one with plot points adjusted and shown in a slightly different order. Okay, I'm not familiar with terminal list. You as a show. Okay, I did wonder that. So I think I've heard about that one. It's about a stalker. Cool. Is it like a thriller? I've heard you should at least watch season 1 of Expanse because the descriptions aren't very detailed. Oh, so watch season 1 of The Expanse before you dive into the book series. Okay. The Expanse, I think you should watch, or you could watch or read first, but the show currently doesn't complete the story, but it does end at a good point. I might read them first because some of the show changes. Is the Expanse series over like the show? Are they not making any more? Yeah, I agree. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes, depends. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I do wish they gave Ron more to do in the movies. I will say that because he is my favorite character from the books, and I do feel like he gets sidelined a little bit. But I mean, the movies still work. They were very successful. Pretty much hold to the heart of the story. Reacher is really good. The Tom Cruise movies are all right, but he's too small. Okay. I have heard that. Yes, The Expanse was canceled by Amazon. That is sad, particularly if people were enjoying it and saying it was really close to the books. But at least so I believe the comment earlier said they ended in a good place. So, like, at least that's good because I really hate whenever a series ends on a cliffhanger and then gets canceled. The Expanse is looking for a new home. Well, I hope it finds it and actually is able to continue what they were doing of, like, making a really good adaptation, because that would be awesome if that happens. So, aside from oh, what is this? Amazon upped the girl boss power post season 4, and the fans didn't like it. I see that because pretty much every other Amazon show did the exact same thing. We had, Rings of Power do that, we had Wheel of Time do that. Hmm. I'm still bitter about the ending of Alpha, as I assume this is a character in The Expanse. How many books are in The Expanse? Because I haven't really started planning next year, but maybe I should start planning my next year reading. There's so many books to read, though. There's so many books I want to read. Have you guys read much sci-fi? So I know The Martian was mentioned earlier, and then The Expanse. I've not actually read that much sci-fi, so I'm assuming The Expanse is like a good place to start with sci-fi. But like, are there any other sci-fi books that I should be looking into reading? Because that was maybe something I should actually look into a little bit more. Thing I love strong female characters. I just watched all of Yellowstone and will say Teeter is probably my favorite pink haired girl ever. I actually also just finished watching all that they have out of Yellowstone right now. Yes. Yes, she is awesome. But she's also not like I don't know. She's definitely you can be like strong and nuanced and not like Amazon version of strong female characters, which is just like strong, powerful, and that's it. Expanse is 9 books. They're really pretty fast. I am HO. Okay. I don't think they're that long. I don't think The Expanse is that long. I'll look into it. There's a lot of long series I want to read though. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Well, and that's why she was even hired in the first place, is because she proved that she was able to do what they needed around the ranch. And I also, like, really liked whenever they were like, "Oh, no more girls in the bunkhouse," and she came forward and was like, "Hey, wait a minute. This was not the agreement." Um, so yeah, I agree. Which TV show? Hang on. Let me scroll back. Are we are is did The Expanse end on a epic cliffhanger? Or are we talking about a different TV show? A Fire Upon the Deep is a sci-fi book that comes very highly recommended. I don't think I've heard of that one. But, I mean, I guess it kinda makes sense because 'cause I'm not that well versed in the sci-fi, like, community. Fire Upon the Deep. I will have to look into that one more because it's 613 pages. Let's see how many books it is. It looks like it's only it's a trilogy. Okay. I will look into that. Oh, Alpha's TV series. Gotcha, and it ended on a cliffhanger and got canceled. That is such a shame. I hate when that happens. How do you know? The second part of season 5 isn't out, right? Or did they say that this is what's gonna happen? The Alphas, I don't know that one. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one either. Hey, if anyone's new here, we're talking August wrap up and September TBR. So if there's any books you have read recently that you really enjoyed or really didn't enjoy, tell us about them or just thought was meh. And also, if you have any upcoming reading plans, I kind of started talking about September TBR and then it devolved into all of my reading plans for the rest of time. So that is what we're talking about now. There's a news article a day or 2 ago, he came out and said he's suing Taylor Sheridan. I did not see that. I had no idea. Basically, he's accusing Taylor Sher I don't know how to say his last name, sorry, of breach of contract. I had no idea all of that went down. Whoa, because I thought they had just planned to end the series at 5 seasons. I had no idea. Now I'm kind of worried about the second half of season 5 because what if it's not good? Or, like, what if it doesn't actually wrap up stuff? Because I fully expected they were gonna wrap up stuff. That's sad. I didn't watch the prequel. There's 2 prequel series to Yellowstone, right? Are they any good? Has anyone seen them? If not, that's fine too. One of the other series I started buddy reading with my sister, and then she finished without me, is the, Legacy of the Force books, and I might try to catch up with her at some point, but, that's why I got this one out because I was like, "I maybe am gonna try to read it in September," but I think my September is getting a little bit full, so this might be a finish next year series. Kevin alleges he was hired for, like, 7 or 8 seasons, and after his divorce, Sheridan decided to cancel the production and fire Kevin. That's so odd. But wouldn't they have fired everyone, or did they not hire the other actors for more series? I'm looking forward to my Hobbit reread, and I have a few King Arthur retellings to get to. Ooh, what King Arthur retellings? I don't actually think I've read very many King Arthur retellings. And I don't know, it's one of those, things that I want to check out a little bit. And yes, The Hobbit reread is great. I want to reread all of the Lord of the Rings with the Andy Serkis audiobooks at some point, um, because I have listened to the Andy Serkis audiobooks and I really enjoy them, but I've only really listened to The Fellowship and, like, none of the other ones were out yet. So, I want to, like, just go back through and reread all of Lord of the Rings, like, that should be at least every few years, you know? They're those kind of books. What are some of the books that got you guys into fantasy or some of the first, fantasy books that you read? Because Narnia and Lord of the Rings was, like, among the first fantasy books that I read. Would you believe me if I told you all the set pieces in Yellowstone are 100% accurate to the Yellowstone Ranch, which is an existing and operational ranch? I have heard that. I totally believe it. I've been, I don't know where in Montana that is, but I've been to Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Colorado, like those surrounding states, and yeah, I totally believe that a place like that exists. And I did kind of look up because I'm pretty sure they rent out the house that was used to film for the show. Like they let people like it's a I want to say it's not a bed and breakfast, like it's an Airbnb or something whenever they're not filming. I have Lancelot and Camelot, Legendborn and Bloodmarked, and Crystal Cave. I have Legendborn on my TBR for someday. But I've heard really good things about it. Tamara Pierce was your first fantasy book that you read. I read Tamara Pierce. I don't remember which one I read. I read one of them whenever I was in my teens, but I don't really remember it that well. And I didn't read like a whole bunch of her books. Like I feel like everyone else has. Southwestern corner of the state, which is where the ranch exists. Southwestern corner. I've not been to that part of Montana. I will say this about the Expanse show, it starts kind of slow, but usually hooks people by around episode 4 or 6. I always push people to finish season 1 unless they absolutely hate it. I think I did hear that, and then I think I heard that the main character for season 1 is not, like, the main character for all of the Expanse series. I will have to look into that. My first fantasy was The Circle Opens with Sandra, Briar, Triss, and Daha. I am not familiar with that at all. Did you enjoy it? What's it about? I then branched out to all her other books. You're talking about Tamara Pierce. I know what you're talking about now. Sorry. Yes, I don't remember which one. I think I might have read one of the Elena books or one of the Protector of the Small books. I don't remember which one I read. It is about, like, a girl who wants to be a knight, and I think she dresses up as a boy to become a knight. Am I thinking of the right books? Oh, other books I read, um, early in my introduction to fantasy was Ranger's Apprentice, and I really enjoy those still. Like, they're fun to go back and reread. I didn't read until I was well into adulthood. I think A Song of Ice and Fire was my first fantasy. Oh, wow. Wow, that's great. I didn't read very much fantasy, like, whenever I was growing up. It wasn't really until I was in my later teens that I actually started picking up fantasy at all. But I definitely didn't start with adult fantasy. I read, like, some of the books geared towards younger readers. But A Song of Ice and Fire is a great place to start, or I think it should be. I don't know, but I'm enjoying the book series. Oh, it's Alana the Lioness? Okay. See, I don't really remember it that well. But yeah, I do remember reading something Tamara Pierce. I don't know if they would be fun to go back and read now. Like, maybe because I do sometimes enjoy picking up an occasional middle grade. Like, I'm reading The Wings of Fire right now, which is a middle grade, fantasy series, and I'm enjoying that. So, like, sometimes, like, middle grade YA books are still fun to go back and read. I mostly read horror as a kid. Usually James Herbert or Christopher Pike. Didn't really fall in love with fantasy till I was older. I blamed Tolkien and Peter Jackson. I think Tolkien and Peter Jackson are a great introduction to fantasy. I'm glad that Lord of the Rings opened, um, I guess, fantasy up to like a more mainstream audience, and then I feel like a Game of Thrones or a Song of Ice and Fire did that as well, and I am glad for that. I will say I didn't read I assume that means a lot till grade 3, and by grade 9, I had a reading level in the top 1% of Canadians. Wow, that's impressive. Oh, another fun fantasy, if you like basically smut fantasy, is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I read Throne of Glass, probably back in, like, 2014, and I thought it was meh, and I didn't finish it. Um, I haven't really been that tempted to pick up more Sarah J. Maas, but yeah, I don't know, I don't read, like, that many smut books. I'm fine if books have, like, sex scenes or whatever in them, have sexy times, I'm cool with that, but I like a little bit more plot or, like, something else, not just reading it for that. So, but I didn't think the Throne of Glass series had as much smut in it. I thought it was her, ACOTAR series. Gotta love her domination of fairy porn, absolutely, and I put out a video a few weeks back about the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I was like, "I'm predicting the Goodreads Choice Awards for the next 5 or 3 years," and basically my predictions are Sarah J. Maas. Because she always wins the fantasy category whenever she releases a book. She's not releasing a book this year, though, so this year's Goodreads Choice Awards, I don't think is gonna be a SJM book, but yeah, she definitely had more power to her. Throne of Glass, has sex scenes that take up, like, 10 pages at a time describing everything in detail. The Throne of Glass series does? I thought that was, like, her YA series. I'm actually a little surprised at that. Um, I don't think there was much of that in the first book, though, right? I don't remember it if there was, but maybe that's because I actually remember more of the plot. Because the first part of the book was like she is trying to prove that she's a really badass assassin. And then the second part of the book, there's like a paranormal element that suddenly comes into play. And I was just like, where did this paranormal element come from? I will say if Amazon wanted sex scenes and a girl boss, they should have adapted that series. I thought I heard I don't think it's Amazon, but I thought someone did, pick up the rights to Sarah J. Maas's books. Probably Netflix. I I'm gonna double check that now. Because and I thought I don't remember if it was the Throne of Glass series or if it was her ACOTAR series. SJM TV adaptation. Okay, so the creator of Outlander has signed on to create an ACOTAR series for Hulu. And that was announced on March 26, 2021. So I assume not much has happened since then because let's see. Cast, rumors, release date. Is there anything we actually know about this series? um, this is just talking about the series itself. Yeah, there's like nothing announced yet. and it was picked up in 2021. So I assume it's still in pre-production if anything's happening at all on that. I would always wanted to be brave enough to write what real fae are like and not this pretty brooding guy in real folklore is dark and creepy. I feel like a lot of like dark and creepy character or creatures from folklore end up turning into like cute, fun characters instead of because mermaids are the same way. Like mermaids, from my understanding, like the folklore of them is much, much darker. But I feel like a lot of fairy tales are that way. Like the fairy tales we see now are so much lighter than the fairy tales are. I remember I think I read Cinderella and the stepsisters literally cut their heels off to fit their foot into the glass slipper. Like, there's just crazy stuff like that. Another great series is The Dresden Files. Well, really anything that Jim Butcher wrote so far. I haven't decided if I'm actually gonna pull the trigger on The Dresden Files, but that's probably gonna be a little bit, probably after Run with the Yodeling and Shannara. Yes, tell us, what did you think? The show was as bad as Wheel of Time. I heard it was, like, quite campy. They completely misunderstood the series and tried to do some Monster of the Week BS and was boring. Seriously, a hokey stick rather than a meticulous carved staff. Yeah. I haven't actually read any, but Jacqueline Carey is meant to be pretty steamy. I have heard that. But I've also heard her books, like, hailed more in your traditional fantasy circles than, like, most of people who like their high fantasy are not that into well, I mean, it depends because you do have people who like both, or, like, not as into Sarah J. Maas, but then you have people that are like, "Oh, Jacqueline Carey is really good." So, I don't know. Pretty sure all folklore is much darker than the way it's been told in the past 100 years. Yes. Yes, true. Here in Scotland, we have Kelpie statues, which I found strange and funny as they are children. What? The hokey stick. Is the hokey stick a show creation? I thought it was supposed to be that. I don't know that much about Dresden. I know it's like a wizard detective. Aside from that, I don't actually know. I'll vouch for Dresden Files books. I know some don't care for it. Long series too. Yes, it is a long series. But those books, are generally shorter. Like, they're not a long series of 800-page books, I don't think. I thought they're, like, 400 pages, and that makes a big difference. Because if every book is, like, 800 pages or, the Stormlight Archives, every book's 1,000 pages, so you have to read, like, 4,000 pages to read all the books that are out right now. Whereas some of the other series I want to read like someone was saying the Expanse books, I'm pretty sure they aren't that long. Oh my gosh. Okay. The Divergent books were my favorite book were my favorite books when they first came out. I hadn't read any dystopias at that point. They were the first dystopia books I read, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, these books were great." And I can't even think about rereading them now because I'm almost positive I will hate them. They are very different from the movies. The movies were terrible. Um, yeah. Also, one of the reasons I'm positive that I would hate these books now is I know Tris and Four are only, I think, a year or two apart in age, but they start their romantic relationship when he is her teacher. So we have a teacher student romance. And I don't like power dynamic differences in relationships. So I think if they were going to have a romance, they needed to wait until after she was completely finished training and they were on the same level power-wise again, and that's why I won't reread them because I just no. The staff is an oak carved 6-foot stick with hand carved runes. I'm assuming this is talking about Dresden. Yeah, they're short books. Exactly. Like a 9-book series of like 400-page books is probably the same. I can't math right now. But it's probably the same as like some of these 4 or 5 book series that are like 1,000 pages long. Harry Dresden is a wizard and basically adult version of Harry Potter. It has love scenes and continuity between the books. I have the first 2 books on my November TBR to immerse read with James Marsters. I assume that is the audiobook narrator. Yes, I did hear about that because it's like a modern it's modern day, isn't it? With magic? I'll say overall, Dresden Files are short. It's only, what, 15 books now? What? But it's still shorter than Stormlight Archives. There's 15 books in the Dresden series? I thought someone just said it was a 9-book series, or is that I'm thinking about The Expanse? Yes, I did hear that. Dresden is current day. That's what I thought. Modern day Chicago. Cool. Well, I've been going for about an hour now. I will say whatever length Stormlight is for sure worth it. I even bought the limited edition of the first book. I'm gonna get to Stormlight someday. I will. But there's a lot of long series I'm trying to read. I think I'll wait until after he releases the 5th book, and then maybe I'll binge it. There's 19 in the Dresden series! Oh my gosh, this just keeps getting longer. Codex Alera is another great read. I've heard a lot about that one. I think I'm probably gonna read that one eventually. I don't know. Expanse is 9, Dresden is 17 with some short stories. Oh, so is it 19 with the short stories, but 17 without them? Okay. Well, I have been going for about an hour now, and I am going to head out, but it was fun chatting with everyone here, and thankfully, it didn't sound like the storm got too crazy out there. So I kept internet the entire time, which is great. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend and a good week next week. And happy reading. And let me know all the books that you have been reading that you've enjoyed and what I should be reading. So, see ya.